Welcome to Grinders Live. I'm your host, Ezel MT, and today we're going to be breaking down the 12-game NHL slate. Joining me again is Tasteful Tides. Tim, how's it going today?
Good. How you doing, Taylor?
Doing all right. I would say I'm feeling a little under the weather, like some NHL teams seem to be, but like they are, we'll power through and break down the slate for everybody.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really good GPP slate today.
Absolutely. So just a heads up, we are running back our NHL Grinders Live contest on YouTube. So if you head over to YouTube on this video, hit the like button and leave a comment with your guess on who will be the highest scoring skater of the night and their predicted score. The winner will get a free week of RG Premium, the combo package. So head over to the YouTube video. Also check out scoresandodds.com. Don't have quite the lead in like I did last week. Tim, I don't know if you've hit any huge single game parlays lately, but
no, I haven't.
either way, there's great content over there. You've got daily expert picks, analysis tools, NHL, NBA, MLB, PGA, and more. Check it out at scoresandodds.com. All right, let's get into it. A few less games than Tuesday, which is welcomed. Quote, only 12. I think there will still be a few cross-offs, but we do have plenty of time to break it down today. Starting out, we've got the Senators taking on the Bruins. Bruins are, looks like about minus 275 favorites. It's actually moved a little bit towards the Senators, likely due to some injuries on the Bruins side of the ice. Senators are obviously big underdogs. Do you have any interest in them?
No, I don't really have that much interest in them. I might need to look at this a little bit more in depth, but I kind of want to know why Travis Hamonic all of a sudden played 24 minutes in their last game. So if he's going to play over 20 minutes, I do have a little bit of tournament interest in him at, I think it's around 3,700. But other than that, I really have no interest in their forwards or their goalies.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it may be that my boy, we talked about Eric Brandstrom last time and how you were out on him. They may have just kind of given up on that experience.
Yeah, because Hamonic has got really strong peripherals. So
right.
if he's gonna be playing over 20 minutes a night going forward, I'd keep an eye out on his price for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he could be what I wanted Brandstrom to be over and over and get that high usage.
Right.
That's interesting. I'll have to look into that. All right. On the Boston side, I'm assuming a little bit more enticing to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the usual suspects for me on Boston one. I actually bet the over on the DeBrusque shot prop at 2.5 plus 130 on DK. I have a lot of interest in this first line in cash games or GPPs. They are going to be fairly popular, so just keep that in mind on this 12-game slate. Obviously you can go down to Taylor Hall if you're looking for or Charlie McAvoy for a power play stack. I do think the Bruins win this game pretty easily, and the production should come from this top line.
Yeah, I'm there with you, and I'm looking on lineup HQ, and it looks like we've got Boston one at around 11 to 13%, which feels about right. And I don't think that's enough to keep me off of them. If they're under that 15%, I'll take that all day long. Only other thing I'll point out, Matt Grzelcyk will be back. And I know Hampus Lindholm and Brandon Carlo are both out. So Grzelcyk's not the worst punt option. They're pretty thin on the decor right now. If you can pay up, like you said, McAvoy should be an excellent play.
Yeah, and if Grzelcyk's still out, Mike Riley too is another good punt, I think, at 2,600.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, definitely check back before lock. I know we have more than usual that are going to be game time decisions. So check out the Discord before lock. We'll have all the latest news for you there. All right, let's move on to the Blues and Sabres. I would say a fairly similar game to the first one in that a heavy favorite on one side. It's moved a little bit towards the underdog. I think this one's now minus 200 towards the Blues, 6.5 total. Let's start with the visiting Blues. What stands out to you there?
So my only real interest is the Blues top line: Tarasenko, Buchnevich, Thomas. The only problem with that is that I believe that they removed Tarasenko from the top power play unit. So that kind of,
Really?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe I saw that they were put Cairo on the top power play
Hmm.
unit. So I might, we might need to check into that further. But
Yeah, that's what I'm
if
seeing too.
is it okay? So I mean, if Tarasenko's off of that top power play unit, that really kind of shrinks this line. But you know, this would be the line that I'd want if I take anything from the Blues.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I think the other day I called them the 1B line and I kind of put quotes around it. It's funny that they now officially have them as the first line. For the longest time they had the O'Reilly line, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they even put the Shen line, and I think everyone agreed that this line has been their true one line for a while now. And I
I wouldn't mind Shen as a one off. Or no, excuse me, Perron, David Perron as a one off. But that would be about it for the Blues side.
Yeah, that is bizarre on Tarasenko, and that definitely knocks him down in my book.
Yeah,
What
because
about
he's actually pretty expensive, so he needs. I think he needs that power play time.
Agreed? Yeah, I mean at 69, we have him at low ownership, but I think that's probably warranted at this point.
Yeah,
Whereas, I mean, Kyrie is actually his projections only zero point 0.5 off, so I'm assuming our projections already have the fact that he's on the number one power play baked in. All right. What about the Sabres? I know we talked on Tuesday about how good their top line has been on a
I
slate this
yeah,
large. Do you have some interest in that top line?
I actually have a lot of interest in Buffalo for tournaments. Just this top line. Um, I think that they come in at a reasonable price. Bennington's not this top goalie that people might think he is because he had such a good run on the playoffs. He's been prone to blowups and has been very inconsistent all season long. So I think Buffalo one makes for a really good contrarian stack.
Yeah, I agree. And then you can throw in Darlene for, I believe he's 4,700.
Yeah.
That's a really cheap power play one and even strength stack. So I agree. And I think they'll be low single digits. If they score, what's nice is, yeah, they might only score 2 or 3 goals, but more than most teams, they could absolutely all come from that top line. They don't have a ton of secondary scoring. So even if you don't expect them to score a ton, they could all be concentrated, which is what you want.
And their prices keep dropping, which is what we want too. They
Yep.
were like up to like the high sixes, low sevens, like a couple weeks ago. Now they're back to where they should be. So you're not paying a huge premium for them.
Yep. All right, moving on. We've got one of the better games of the night. We've got the Capitals taking on the Maple Leafs. Quick shout out to us. I definitely mentioned that the line the other night for the Maple Leafs was way too high. I didn't end up betting the Sabres. I wish I would have, but Matthews finally busted, something we haven't seen in a very long time. We'll come to the Maple Leafs here in a minute, but let's start with the visiting Capitals. At this point, it's interesting. It's moved to a minus 160 to 170 for the Maple Leafs.
Wow.
I'm not a Maple Leafs hater by any means. I think they're a very good team. That feels steep to me yet again. I feel that they should be kind of a 135 to 140 favorite,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess Vegas odds, they don't feel too high on the Capitals. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you about the line. That seems a little bit steep for Toronto. For DFS, it's probably Washington too, with like Oshie and Backstrom, and then you can play Ovechkin in that for a power play stack. I say it over and over and over again how Toronto just is not that good defensively. They have really, really poor goaltending. So any kind of power play stack against them. I'm not crazy about Washington one because I don't want to pay 6,300 for Kuznetsov. I think that's
Which by the way, I think I might know why the line is as high as it is. I'm seeing that Kuznetsov and Orlov didn't skate this morning due to an illness.
oh
So
okay.
that actually may be part of it. I mean, obviously Kuznetsov would be more valuable there, but they rely on him a good bit. So keep an eye on that. And
Yeah, so maybe if we can get Backstrom to that top line for 4,000,
Yeah,
That
that's a lot more appealing because I mean they're largely the same.
Right.
Backstrom's a little bit more pass first, but I don't think that's a huge downgrade from a fantasy perspective.
No, yeah, right. And it's a $2,300 discount. So I mean, keep an eye out on that news. If it's Backstrom, I'd have a lot more interest in him. I like TJ Oshie's price a ton at 3K. That's about it. If Matt Irwin, who's min price for Washington, draws into the lineup, I think he's a really, really good punt.
Yeah, that's a good call. If Orlov is out, then he can absolutely, get 20 minutes or so. All right, take me through the Toronto side. Like I mentioned, they just busted. I think some people that were burned by it will be off of them. Are you getting back on?
I'm probably not going to get back on because I only build one team a night. If I was going to make more teams this evening, I would definitely be playing Toronto because they are going to be just tremendous leverage off of the Avalanche, off of the Bruins, off of the Canucks. So this Maple Leafs team has a humongous ceiling and they're going to be so low owned, I would imagine. So in tournaments, don't forget about these guys because Matt, everyone's going to be playing McKinnon because McKinnon is just priced far too low. So Matthews is just going to be the forgotten guy tonight.
Yeah, I was just looking on lineup HQ and we have him at 10%. And anytime you can get someone of Matthews caliber on a slate this large at 10%, you almost have to go for it. Even if there are better matchups out there, he has as much upside as anyone.
I bet that's high, to be honest with you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would bet the under 10% on that.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, we'll get to the later on when we get to the Oilers game, but it is wild on a slate with both Matthews and McDavid that both will likely have pretty low ownership, which is not something I would ever say.
Right.
Yeah.
I always got to plug in Jake Muzzin, who's still under 3K on DK. He missed the last game. I don't know why, but I think we have him projected to play tonight. So he is always a good punt at under 3K on DK.
Yeah. Only other thing to mention, I mean, we talked about Marner the other day. He's 8.6. That's honestly too high, but I know you were fairly high on the Tavares and Nylander kind of stack as part of the power play at 6.2 and 5.9. I think they're absolutely in play. So it's something to consider. Even if you're not wanting to go Matthews and you just want to go mini stack with those two, you could get some exposure to this game for cheap.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We've got the Ducks and Lightning in one of the bigger mismatches. I'm assuming the Ducks are a cross off. I know the other night we did mention that top line. I think they came through pretty well. Is there any chance you're going back? At least if you were multi-entering?
No, I'm not. I have no interest in the Ducks tonight. I think they're pretty clear cross off for me. This is like, even if I was building, 40 teams, 20 teams, I don't think I would have any Ducks tonight.
Yeah, I agree. On a slate this big, you can probably scratch them off. On the Lightning side, only note that I see and looking at the projected lineups, it looks like Cirelli is now on the top power play instead of Killorn. I don't know that there's still much of a ceiling there, but I'm assuming your interest would be kind of on their big guns on the Lightning side.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously do have interest, and this is obviously a humongous mix match, but they're not even these big dogs for Tampa Bay. They're not a priority for me. I just don't know if they're going to have like the same. This game is going to have the same pace to it as other games on the slate. I don't know if I would try honestly to be underweight this game. Not to say that you would have to like full on fade them, but I just don't think they're priorities.
That was my initial lean. And then in looking, and once again, I think you and I are both single entry players, so we're probably not going to get there. But for the MME people out there, we're showing everyone but Kucherov at 3% or less. And it's like their team total. I haven't looked lately, but I would imagine it's in the top 3 or 4. It's below some of those elite ones, but probably around 4 goals. That's worth more than 3% probably. So I agree on the surface. I'm not in love with them, but if you told me that the Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, they combined for 5 or 6 real life points, that wouldn't shock me either. Hedman, I probably wouldn't get there on Hedman unless you're going full on slot stack, but
I just like this team a lot more when it's Stamkos and Kucherov skating together at even strength.
Yeah, that is a little bizarre.
I love that. I love that line when they're all together. But when they separate them, I don't know. I just feel like it just hurts their DFS value so much having Palat there. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a wet blanket for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Reminder for those of you watching on YouTube, leave a comment with your guess for the highest scoring skater on DK. Winner gets a free week of Combo RG Premium. All right. Moving on, we've got the Islanders taking on the Penguins. It looks like the Penguins are minus 155 at this point. I would not be surprised if that moves a little bit towards the Islanders. The Penguins do have some injury news that we'll get to here in just a minute. Let's start with the Islanders. Only thing I'll point out here, I don't know if you saw what JG Pajot did the other night, came through again. He did it through block shots this time, but that's just what he does. He just comes through for us. But I'm assuming similar to Tuesday, not a ton of interest here in the Islanders.
No, I mean, I think that people might, chase this game because they missed out on the big Parisi game. But I wouldn't chase the Islanders here tonight. I mean, I know that they have a lot of, quote, value wingers, but I really have no interest in this Islanders team.
Yeah, I agree with you. So on the Penguin side, definitely something people want to follow up until lock. Malkin's still suspended. He's for sure out. But Brian Rust and Evan Rodriguez are both game time decisions. I believe they've got a bit of a stomach bug going through their lineup at this point. So if both of them are out, what interest do you have in some of those ancillary pieces? Or I guess if they play, I mean, you could just sort of break down if they do or do not play.
So the first thing I want to say is that regardless of the injury news, Jake Guentzel is far too cheap and should be, I think, in the cash game conversation. 6,300. He's going to play all the minutes regardless of injury. So I think he might be in my single entry lineup no matter what. If these guys do sit, obviously we're going to have to check, pregame lines, but Raquel probably. It would give a big boost to Crosby, who I don't usually like to play on such a big slate, but he might end up being a really, really strong play. But I think that would be about it for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at the lines and just trying to project out what might happen. And Raquel's not even on power play 2, which I find a little bit bizarre. So my initial thought was if both of them are out, that Raquel would get bumped up. I do think that's probably true at even strength. I think he moves up and takes Russ' spot there. But because he's not on the second power play, I've got to imagine it's someone like Kapanen or Heinen or Jeff Carter that's moving up, which is a bummer because I think Raquel could have been, if you told me he was power play 1 and on the first line at even strength with Crosby at 4.2K, I would have a lot of interest.
Yeah.
If now that's someone like Zucker, let's see if Zucker's on the second power play. Yeah, Zucker is on the second power play. He's 2.7, so he could be just a smash if he's going to be getting 16, 18 minutes in power play 1. I think Zucker or whoever, like you said, when the lines come out, we'll know a lot more as far as what the value is.
The good thing is that this is a 7:00 game, so we're not going to have to worry about doing 2v2s or 3v3s, in the middle of the night. So this is just pay attention to our Discord, and we'll post the lines for you.
Absolutely. All right. Another mismatch upcoming. We've got the Red Wings taking on the Hurricanes in Carolina. Are the Red Wings another scratch off for you?
Pretty much. I don't really have any interest in them at all.
Yeah.
I think the most I think the most important thing is figuring out what you want to do with your Carolina stacks. I mean, Carolina is such a deep team. It's a 3-line team. You can go so many different ways stacking your Carolina lines tonight. If I had to pick one, I would go Carolina 2. That would be my preferred line. But really, I mean, this is a great spot up and down for Carolina.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had Vincent Trocheck, and he's got me a big, 6.7 DK point. So
yep. I was basically about to say that same thing, because I feel like I always say to play Vincent Trocheck and he never does anything.
I had a lineup when they were in the late game, and I was set to cat. He needed like 8 to 10 points, and I'm taking down like the 333, and he gets one shot on goal and one block or something like that. Yeah. So I shouldn't treat it that way. I realize you have to have a short memory, but man, he has burned me a lot this year.
So. I just like that, he's on that top power play. He's got Teravainen on the top power play and at even strength, and they're cheap. I think they're under 10K. Yeah, they're 9,500. So I think if you want exposure, that'd be my favorite.
Yeah, and I'm just filtering by all the games and by points per dollar, and he actually does rate out as one of the points per dollar, or the best points per dollar plays on the slate. Once again, on paper, that sounds great. I don't know that I'll get there. I think if I were going anywhere, I'd probably just do a 2-man of Aho and Svechnikov. You got to pay up a little bit for it, but I feel like if they are going to go off for 4 or 5 goals, those two are going to be involved in at least a little bit of it. All right. Moving on, we got a good real life game. I would say potentially decent fantasy. We got the Wild and Stars. Let's start with Minnesota. I know last week or earlier in the week, we talked about how great some of those pieces have been with Kaprizov, Boldy. This is a lot tougher matchup than they had. Is this something that you're going to be looking into for tonight?
I don't really have a ton of interest in the Wilds. I mean, you can always go to, Kaprizov, but I don't think this is a really good matchup for him. I do have quite a bit of interest in like Joe Pavelski. That price just keeps on falling. I mean, he's 5,300 now. Hintz is 5,800. I mean, that's really cheap. This is another one of those teams where a lot of the goals come from this line. They're all like Buffalo. Dallas is just a better version of Buffalo, in my opinion. And it's just, if they put up 3 goals against Minnesota, there's a good chance that this Dallas one has all 3 of those goals. And at these prices, that's good enough. So I really like the prices on this Dallas team. It's not the best matchup in the world, but I also think that they have a ceiling, and you need a ceiling tonight. And I think that this team has that. So I think it's Fleury in net tonight, which makes a big difference. If it's Fleury in net, then I think it is Fleury in net. So that's Talbot at this point is a better goalie than Fleury. So that just gives me an even bigger boost for Dallas.
Yeah, I actually looked up. I know last time we both referenced that tweet that we had seen about the percentage of goals that had come from Dallas one. So I'll read it off here real quick. So Hintz has 32, Pavelski 28, and Robertson 34 goals. That's 94 of their 215, or 44% of their goals, which is just, I mean, to your point, that has to be, if not the highest, top 3 highest percentage in the league, 44% of the goal. I mean, I think, like we've been talking about, Buffalo one, maybe in that like 35%, but yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. I mean, this top line is 16-6. Yeah. That's fully playable in any format.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. Game of the night candidate, and that's not my bias. I think most would agree that this is going to be a good one. Got the Oilers and Preds. I know we were talking before we came on that we can see this going a variety of ways as far as Could be lots of goals, could be low scoring. I think we'll agree it's definitely going to be up tempo, but whether there's goals or not remains to be seen. Let's start with the Oilers side. I know I was talking at the beginning that McDavid should have very low ownership compared to a normal slate. What stands out to you on the Oilers side?
So it's McDavid, Kane, Vander Kane, who's far too cheap at 4,900. And then I really hate to recommend this guy because he's awful. And but Tyson Barrie is 3,600. The Nashville Predators, I believe, take the second most penalties of any team in the NHL.
Yeah,
now their penalty kill is about middle of the road, but
they're not facing the Oilers every night.
right. So I mean, if you're gonna give Connor McDavid and that power play one, multiple opportunities, they're gonna cash in. So 3,600 for Tyson Barrie is a very, very playable price in any format, GPPs or even cash games, which I hate to even say that out loud, but I might even play him in my cash game.
Yeah, what's bizarre is I think this is the first time all year that the Oilers have been on a slate where I would consider playing Oilers that were not stacked with either McDavid or Draisaitl.
Yep.
I think just the way the pricing comes out, McDavid's 8.5, Draisaitl 7.3. Those are fair prices. I think they're even a little bit underpriced. But then you mentioned Evander Kane at 4.9, Zach Hyman at 4.0. Like those are excellent values. So if you expect them to pick up an assist and several shots on goal without McDavid or Draisaitl just going nuts, I think you could play them either together. I don't know if you play them together because they don't correlate, but I think you could play them as one-offs without McDavid or Draisaitl, which is rarely the case for the Oilers. And even throw in Barrie, like you were saying, just due to the price.
Yeah.
All right, moving over to the Nashville side. So this is largely a pick'em game. Preds are slightly favored. Pricing maybe not as favorable. Do you like anything on the Nashville side?
Well, I mean, obviously Roman Yossi smash play. I don't think I can get to him tonight. 8,600. I don't think I can roster him. If you're making multiple teams, take advantage of this game. Make sure to get exposure to Forsberg, Yossi. You could go to a cheap little two-man at Granlund and Tolvanen, who are 29 and 2,500. Granlund does get time on the first power play. This to me is just an amazing GPP game because the pricing just seems really, really soft. I really like Soros as my GPP goalie today. He's my favorite tournament goalie because I think he's going to get plenty of volume. I would have to, if I had to bet on this game, I think Nashville wins. And those guys for Edmonton could still pay off their price tags.
Yeah. It's tough. I went into the slate wanting to target Forsberg because I think he will be loan or that mini stack of Forsberg and Duchesne. But in looking at that range on Winger, I've got it sorted by salary on lineup HQ. And I mean, that's just a loaded range. We've got Timo Meyer, who we can probably talk about here in a little bit. You've got Jake Guentzel, who you mentioned before, could be a cash game lock. You've got Matthew Tkachuk. We'll talk. So it's tough. I agree. If you're making 20 lineups, I think you could even full game stack this one in one or two and feel good about it. And if it does go off for one of those 5-4 games that we were talking about, it's going to be the big guns. I don't think either of these teams are going to be getting a whole lot of ancillary scoring from their third lines. So you know where the production is going to come from.
I will say on a macro level, if you're multi-entering tonight, I would honestly tell you, don't be afraid to spread out even more than you normally would, because there are a lot of good stacks tonight, a lot of good value, and there's a lot of teams with some really good ceilings. So I don't know if you have to condense your pool as much as you normally would.
Yep. All right. We've got moving from a good real life game to an ugly one. We've got the Sharks and Blackhawks, both of whom are in the midst of lost seasons. Sharks are slight favorites here. It's largely a pick 'em with a 6-goal over under. Let's start with the visiting Sharks. I already threw out Timo Meyer. I know you mentioned him on Tuesday. I'm assuming you have interest in Meyer.
Yeah.
Talk to me about him and any other pieces you might have interest in.
Yeah. So I really want to hear about this Pittsburgh news because I initially had Meyer as my, guy in that price range in my cash game build. He's right now my favorite of this group. I would prioritize him over any of the other wingers in that range that we've mentioned so far. So I actually, as gross as it sounds, I actually bet the Sharks tonight. So
I'm with you. I mean, the
yeah.
Blackhawks have been so bad.
The thing about the Sharks is that they've actually been competitive. I think they've lost 7 in a row, but 4 of those games they lost by 1 goal to playoff teams. So they've actually been competitive, whereas Chicago has not been competitive at all.
Yeah,
I think Chicago has just folded, essentially. So I really like that San Jose 1 line tonight.
yeah. So I'll bring up. I just pulled up the game log. You had mentioned Erik Karlsson the other night and how cheap he's gotten, and looking at his game log, I can absolutely see why. Wow, like considering how much usage he gets, it's honestly impressive that he's not even getting in the way of more pucks, or eventually you feel like he's going to stumble into one of those nights where he has an assist and 3 block shots. And I mean, he's playing 25 plus minutes, and in his last 4 games, he hasn't had more than single digit DK points. But
and it's not, and like I said, it's not like this team is folding. They're still competitive. So I don't know what he's doing out there, but it's nothing from a fantasy perspective. So
yeah. So if you are, I mean, I think he's still on power play 1. So if you were looking for a throw in, if you're playing Meyer and Couture and a few others, then yeah, you could throw in Karlsson, or you could pay up for Burns and get a little bit higher floor and ceiling there. All right. So we talked about how bad the Blackhawks have been. I think I mentioned on Tuesday, I rode them for a while. I am completely off at this point. Are you on the same page?
I honestly am on the same page. I mean, they shouldn't be write-offs, but I think that they are. Optimizers, projection systems, they might not agree with me. They probably still show up in good spots on optimizers, but I wouldn't play any of them. I have no interest, even if I was making 20 teams. Even Patrick Kane, who I absolutely love, they still play that top line 20 plus minutes a night. I still have no interest in this team.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into a computers versus eye test debate or anything, because I'm largely in the middle. I think there's value in both, but
I am too. Yeah,
I agree. Like there's something to be said in just watching this team play where they just look out of it. And even if the underlying numbers, once again, the computers can't see those. I'm sure people are going to come after me for saying that. I'm all about projections. Projections are great, but I agree. I mean, until I see signs of life in the Blackhawks, I'm probably out completely.
Yeah.
All right. Moving to probably the most popular team of the night. You've got the Devils taking on the Avalanche. Before we get to the Avalanche, any pieces from the Devil intriguing to you?
Not that I would deem as priorities, really. I mean, Colorado is a really good defensive team, so I don't have a ton. Fabian Zetterlund, I believe his name is, top line, min price, maybe. I think there's so many min price guys though tonight that on this slate, it's really not necessary.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And the only guy, I mentioned him on Tuesday, and he just keeps coming through. I mean, Nico Hischier has been honestly outstanding lately. It's just a tough ass 6,100 going into Colorado. Yes, the Avs are on the second of a back-to-back, but as we'll talk about here in a minute, they had put that game away early last night to where they were rotating their third and fourth lines to where it's hardly a back-to-back for them. I mean, they basically had a scrimmage last night.
I was just going to say, I don't really even feel like this is a back-to-back. Like this is.
Yeah, it stinks that the industry, everyone's gotten so much smarter about this kind of stuff, because it used to be that everyone would see, oh, they're on the back-to-back. And now everyone looks at the usage and they look, and we're just a lot smarter than we used to be. And I think everyone is on that. And that shows in the ownership where we have, let's see here. Yeah, we have McKinnon at 19, may even get a little bit higher than that. I think it could be in the low 20s.
See, I would bet the over on that and the under on the Matthews.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe you and I are just looking into the back-to-back and not placing any emphasis on that, whereas others might be. But
yeah,
I agree. I mean, I'd be shocked if it wasn't closer to 25%.
If he's if and that's the thing. We talk about good chalk, bad chalk. If McKinnon's going to be, 20%, let's say 25%, I would go over that.
Yeah.
And that means that you could still get pieces of Matthews and McDavid because they're going to be so low owned. You could build a couple hedge stacks with those two guys.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think on Tuesday, both of us were at least open to the idea of fading Matthews. It kind of felt like there was a possible dud. I honestly don't feel that way for McKinnon tonight. Like, I just don't see a scenario. The matchup isn't even that much better. I think Matthews played the Canadians who are the Sabres who weren't great, but this just feels like a smash spot. I just don't see how at home where they are so dominant, they're flying around the ice. I think I wrote up on Scores and Odds over 1.5 for Matthews, and it was at plus money. And I was like, that feels like a gift.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it was like 105 or something.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah. I mean, that just tells you they think there's 50-50 chance. I think it's greater than that he has 2 or more points. So who would you
just New Jersey has no goaltending. Who's going to stop the puck? It's like the Avalanche are going to dominate possession so well in this game, and New Jersey has no goaltending. So It's just, I don't really see Colorado busting tonight.
Yeah. So what other piece? I mean, obviously Matthews is going to be the priority. I mean, what are some other pieces?
Don't forget about Arturi Lehkonen, who gets time on the first power play. That's just one of these kind of random guys that I think get kind of lost in the shuffle because everyone's so, into the guys that they know, into that top line, into Makar. Don't forget about him. Don't forget about, I don't know who else, maybe Eric Johnson, just as like a random punt if you're making multiple teams. But I would just keep it in that top 6.
Yeah, the one guy I'll call attention to, I think that's interesting. I'm not going to say he's the same as Mitch Marner. Honestly, I think, well, I don't know. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole. But so Mikko Rantanen, lately at least, so I've got his game log pulled up. He hasn't scored in his last 4. He hasn't had more than 4 shots on goal. Yeah, he's been picking up some assists. I think there's an intriguing case to be made to kind of treat him like Mitch Marner, where you don't necessarily, I normally view him as an auto stack with Matthews. I think, with McKinnon. Tonight, I'm looking at that saying, all right, with 7,500 dedicated to that, with that loaded range, we talked about Meyer and Guentzel and some of those others, I may prefer the shots on goal stability from some of those guys. Play McKinnon, like you said, with some of the cheaper pieces, the Lekkonens, the Burakovskis, those types.
Yeah, I mean, like last night we saw, you and I were like right next to each other in the 333.
Yeah, I saw you.
Yeah, you had Makar and I had Rantanen.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had gone Makar, I would have been like top 3, I think.
Yeah, that was a funny sequence. So I had for goalie, I had Montembeau or whatever. So he had like a 0 so I had a 0. I think I had a 3 and I had a 1.5 for 3 of my players. And so I thought I was done, but I had just full on, onslaught stacked the Avalanche. And so I was watching a show with my wife and I looked down and saw it was 8-2. And I was like, I'm probably cashing this
right.
one. So despite having 3 players with 3 points or less, I did at least manage to min cash.
I played Werenski instead of Makar, who got 4.3.
That hurts.
So, but I mean, we both still cashed, but yeah, I mean, Makar was clear. Makar is just, he's incredible. So that to me goes with your argument is it Rantanen or is it Makar? You know what I mean? Like who actually is a better fantasy producer, and
lately it's definitely been Makar. I mean, maybe
right.
for the season. Yeah.
Right. and long term, it's probably going to be Makar too. So it's but really you're splitting hairs. You want to have a ton of Colorado tonight in your GPP pool.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention on Makar, as a Preds fan, a Roman Yossi, I mean, those are kind of the two guys at this point in play for the Norris. And I mean, coaches probably wouldn't come out and admit this, but I do think coaches know that and want to get their guys the production and stats they need. I mean, they're not going to run them in the ground just for that. But if it means getting Makar an extra power play shift late in the game when they're up and the game is sealed, like, I could see that happening. So yes, it's not, I mean, he's a good play regardless, but I do think they'll do everything in their power. The Preds probably don't have that luxury because they're fighting more for positioning, whereas the Avs have a playoff position, pretty much solidified. But just something to consider that Makar, his numbers are going to be good regardless. They could be even better as they're trying to get him the Norris.
Yep.
All right. Another good real life game here. We've got the Golden Knights. We were just talking about the playoff picture. They're fighting for their playoff lives at this point. Not a great time to be traveling. Not a great matchup. They're heading to Calgary to take on the Flames. Flames are -160 favorites. Golden Knights, they're going to be hungry. They're finally a little bit healthy, but is that enough in a tough matchup for you to?
I mean, I say to spread out, but a tough matchup. And then I think they have to go to Edmonton either tomorrow or the next day. I mean, this is a part of their Alberta trip, so this is gonna be a brutal stretch of games for them. And I'm not crazy about them from a fantasy perspective, to be honest with you. Dadonov, first line, first power play, 3,400. He's worthy of a punt. I think, I don't know. I'm just not, Pacioretty seems like he's too cheap at 6,100, but he's having a really bad year. So I'm not crazy about even rostering him.
Yeah, and I was just pulling up the lines because I know when we looked a few days ago, they had spread things out even more. Now it looks like they have Pacioretty and Stone on the same line, which is helpful. So if I were going a route, you could go a mini stack with those two, but Calgary's a good team. They're at home. It's just tough to imagine that the Golden Knights come in there and throw up 4 goals. I mean, I think if they win,
I want to say that I like Mark Stone at 4K, but I don't. Not on this slate. Not on. There's so much value. I don't think he's necessary. He's coming back from a long-term injury. I'm not there with him.
Yeah, let me see. What did he play the other night? He played 17 minutes. So, I mean, they don't seem to be limiting him too much. But honestly, being on a line with Pacioretty probably hurts his shot on goal volume because Pacioretty is obviously going to fire it away. The center's Chandler Stevenson, who's not a super shoot first guy. But I agree. I mean, the price is right. The matchup is definitely not there for Stone. And then what about on the Calgary side? If I remember right, on Tuesday, you're generally overweight on them compared to some just due to the balance that they have. Is that going to be the case again tonight?
Well, I'm overweight on them as like a real life team, but not.
Yeah, sorry, underweight for fantasy is what I meant.
I'm underweight for fantasy. I'm a big believer in them as a team, real life team. But I will say one thing, Blake Coleman has been priced. That's ridiculous. So he is definitely worth a shot in any format as far as I'm concerned. He correlates with Toffoli on even strength. Toffoli's 4,100. That's close to ridiculous. So I have a lot of interest in that Calgary third line. Rasmus Anderson, 4,100. Not usually a big fan of him, but that price is going down. So I like that quite a bit. I think Calgary is a good kind of contrarian late night hammer.
Yeah, I have the lines pulled up and it looks like they have mixed things up. I think we had talked last week that they had reunited their top line. Apparently they have broken them up again.
Oh, is
Mangiapane is,
Mangiapane on the
yeah.
first line now? Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
that is intriguing. I'm assuming he's like 3K or
He's 30, yeah,
30.
30,
Okay. 33.
3,300. Yep.
Yeah. So that's intriguing. I mean, you look at his game log, he's got points in 3 of 4. He's playing about 16 minutes. And honestly, that was probably before he got bumped up. Man, this slate is just loaded with value punts
Yeah,
that you can
this
absolutely
slate
throw
is
in.
all over the place. This is like I might have to throw more teams in tonight because it's going to be so hard to just play one.
Yeah, that's fair. But it does. I mean, the fact that Kachuk is no longer on the top line, that makes the Calgary one stack a little less appealing.
Absolutely. I agree with that completely. I didn't know that Mangiapane was up on the top line. But still, I think Blake Coleman, Tyler Toffoli, third
Yeah,
line, for 6,600.
yeah,
That to me has tons of upside in this matchup.
yep. I'm with you there. All right, moving on. We got our last game. Coyotes taking on the Canucks. Actually, got a message on Twitter that the Canucks talk and the love for the Canucks actually won someone a GPP the other night. So that was one of the few
Cool.
things that we did well the other night.
Yep.
Uh, let's start with the Coyote side. I think we had some interest on Tuesday just due to their min price, cheap value tonight. I don't know that seems nearly as necessary.
It is not necessary
Yeah.
at all tonight. I think you could comfortably X out Arizona out of your player pool.
Yep. I am with you there. And that just goes to show slate by slate. The one the other night was 2 extra games, as a 14 gamer, and yet the Coyotes were viable because they provided value that wasn't anywhere else. Tonight, everywhere you look, you have value options. So, I mean, tonight, as we're sort of recapping the slate here, you're going to need a massive score tonight. There's enough good offenses in play and good matchups. There's enough value that you're going to have to play upside. So, whenever you're putting a lineup together, take a look at it and say, all right, can they go off? And for your punts, it's a little different. I mean, if you get a goal and some shots on goals out of a punt, you're fine. But as you're looking at your primary stacks, you need to make sure, do they have multi-goal upside, or you're not going to make any noise in tournaments.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Canucks. I was very high on them on Tuesday. I'm curious what your thoughts are on them tonight.
Yeah, I mean the industry is going to be there tonight. They're going to be very, very popular. This is going to be kind of like, I say Calgary is a good contrarian late night hammer because this one's going to be the popular late night hammer. A lot of people are just going to backload their lineups and play Colorado, Vancouver. The slate starts at whatever 8:39 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah.
It's going to be Vancouver is going to be heavily, heavily owned tonight. Probably it's going to be that Vancouver top line with Horvat, Pedersen, Garland. That's probably going to be one of the most popular stacks of the night. Garland is probably going to be one of the most popular players of the night. I think he's 4,100. Yeah, so just know that going in. Obviously, they're in an amazing spot. Vancouver's got huge momentum going into this game. I think they've won quite a few games in a row. They're not going to lose tonight. You know, I'm tempered. Like I'm not. I would probably be underweight, but I certainly would not fade them if I was making multiple teams.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a bummer that, I mean, on Tuesday they were low owned and, mentioned winning that guy a GPP tonight. That will definitely not be the case. I think on a slate this big, their ownership won't be out of control, but you're looking right now, we have kind of upper single digits, it looks like, for, well, maybe let me filter this again. Yeah, so we've got like Horvat at 11%. We've got Harlan or Garland at 8. Although I agree with you, that'll probably be higher. But I mean, our projections, and I'm sure others will be similar in sorting by price per dollar for all positions. You've got Chase on, you've got Garland, you've got The guy that I don't like to pronounce his name on the second line begins with the V.
Pagolzin.
Yeah, exactly. You've got
Yeah.
all those in kind of the top 10-ish values in our point per dollars, which tells you that other simulations and projections will have them there as well. I still like them. They were my draft build last night. If ownership gets too high, as we've discussed, there's plenty of other great options. I may have to pivot, but clearly they're in a great spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you're making a stars and scrubs, Colorado, whatever, Colorado 1 or Colorado power play 1, and then you do like a Vancouver second line, you can do that.
Right.
But I'll tell you, there'll be a chance that you'll be duplicated because I think that'll be the chalk build.
Yep. All right. We just got a few minutes and we're a little bit ahead of schedule compared to last week. Any major thoughts on goalie tonight? And I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah. So I thought about this, if you're just playing cash games, then I would go Vasilevsky for the Lightning. Like if you're not worried about a ceiling, you just want like kind of the win, a goalie not to hurt you, he's probably my guy. I wouldn't play him in GPPs though. A lot of these goalies tonight are kind of overpriced.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. They seem to have raised the top price. So like Vasilevsky, Ranta, Francouz, like all the huge favorites are 8,600 or above, which it seems like for a while they've capped out at like the 84 and 85, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but that $300 or $400 can be the difference in, one of the positions being a true punt and someone who's decent. So I agree. I think those are a little overpriced yet getting the safety. I don't think that I'll go with any of the guys in that very, very top end. Is there anyone on the cheaper side that you're eyeing?
Capo Kakinen for the Sharks, because I think the Sharks win that game. So I'm betting on, he'll get the win, he'll get 30 saves. That's a smash at 7,500. I say that I like Calgary, but Liner for 7,400. I think that's a really good GPP play. See, I want to say Demko, but I don't think he's going to see the shot volume. Same thing with Franco for the Avalanche. I don't think he's going to get the shot volume. So if I'm going to go all the way up, I'm going to go all the way up to Vasilevsky. That's why I like Vasilevsky, because I don't like the goalies that are a few $100s cheaper than he is.
Right. Yeah. The only other name I'll throw out. So Ilya Sorokin, I think will get the start for the Islanders. He's 7.3. If they are missing all of their pieces, then that's going to be a really shorthanded Pittsburgh team. And especially if it looks like some of those Pittsburgh players are going to carry a decent amount of ownership, then I'm always a fan of getting on the other side to where if the goalie shuts them out, then you're, doubling up essentially on the field because their stacks have crashed and burned at that point.
And honestly, I think you could go Samsonov for the Capitals. He's going to see the volume against Toronto. We talked about how we think that line for Toronto is a little high. Yeah. Maybe we're right, and maybe Washington keeps playing well and they get the win.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Any other thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I think that'll do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and good luck tonight.